From aged church plots where it's rumored the spirits of some of our nation's founding fathers still linger, to prominent mortuaries whose grounds are purportedly stalked by inhuman things after dark. Are you ready for our fourth list of picks for some of the most haunted graveyards in the United States? Number 5. Spring Grove Cemetery in Arboretum. Spring Grove, located off Spring Grove Avenue in Cincinnati, Ohio, is a 750-acre nonprofit rural cemetery boasting the impressive title of being the third largest cemetery in the country. Historically, this yard was first established in 1845, with the Spring Grove Cemetery formed as a non-profit corporation by the Ohio General to own and manage the property. In 1855, renowned landscape architect Adolph Strauch would take on the job of enhancing the natural beauty of Spring Grove's grounds. And over time, though it was initially highly controversial, its lawn plan would grow to become universally accepted as a model plan for future cemeteries across the globe. In 1987, the old boneyard's name was officially altered to the Spring Grove Cemetery in Arboretum, and in 2007, it was designated a National Historic Landmark. Spring Grove remains open into the present, boasting over 220,000 interments, alongside 300 undeveloped acres, offering ample room for countless future burials. Over the years, a number of tales of terror have spawned amongst these old headstones, with frequent reports of disembodied voices and footsteps, orbs captured in the backgrounds of photographs, the constant and chilling feeling of being closely watched, the sensation of hands tugging at one's ankles while near grave sites, and figures spied roaming about after dark that appear real at first but that, after moments, vanish into thin air. One popular story tells of optometrist C.C. Brewer, who it's claimed had his actual eyeballs implanted into his bust upon his passing. Although this is just a story, and in reality the eyes on said bust are actually formed from glass, they do have a creepy habit of following any who pass by. Lastly, at night, packs of glowing ghostly white wolves have been sighted roaming Spring Grove, fading in and out of view in an ethereal manner. While some tell these beings are guardian spirits, others claim they're bad luck, that they cause accidents or curses to befall any who witness them, and might even act as omens of death. Number 4. Trinity Churchyard. Trinity Churchyard, located off Broadway in New York City, New York, is a historic church and non-denominational cemetery, renowned and recognized for its holding of the remains of both Revolutionary War heroes as well as founding fathers, including Alexander Hamilton. Historically, the first Trinity Church was completed in 1698, with its yard later utilized as a burial plot, but sadly, this first structure was razed to the ground in the Great New York City Fire of 1776, resulting in the construction of a second church in 1790. Unfortunately, through the winter of 1838, severe snowstorms resulted in irreparable damages to this second church, prompting the construction of our current church building, which transpired from 1839 to 1846. When this third church opened its doors, it did so as the tallest building in the whole of the United States, a title which it would hold on to until 1869, as well as the tallest building in NYC, another title which it would hold until 1890. Today, Trinity operates from 3 separate locations across Manhattan, this one being its oldest, and is the only remaining cemetery in the city actively accepting burials. All in all, Trinity is said to hold more than 120,000 bodies, some of which are crammed in close quarters or stacked on top of each other, handling which some theorized has resulted in the yard's purported supernatural activity, with both staff and visitors reporting frequent encounters with full-bodied apparitions in clothing spanning back to the 1600s, as well as with shadowy figures that stalk lone walkers. One headstone on site is marked only with the word comedian, and near it, many have described disembodied laughter, and the full-bodied entity of Alexander Hamilton himself has been sighted near his grave, and has even supposedly held full conversations with select living. Lastly, during the Trade Center attacks of September 11th in 2001, many took refuge within the church in an attempt to escape debris falling from the towers, and since, some have described the sensation of being surrounded by a crowd, often accompanied by the strong, inexplicable feeling of utter panic. Number 3. Old Biloxi Cemetery. Old Biloxi Cemetery, also called Biloxi City Cemetery, and located between Beach Boulevard and Irish Hill Drive in Biloxi, Mississippi, is an aged boneyard boasting the impressive mantle of quite literally being older than the city itself. Historically, in 1699, the area's first permanent European settlement was formed by French colonists, and at the time acted as part of French Louisiana, and it's estimated the cemetery was established shortly afterwards to serve the community. The region would fall under Spanish rule in 1779. In 1784, Louis Fayard would obtain a land grant which would include the old cemetery, and in 1844, Fayard's heirs would deed the cemetery to the town. Sadly, in 2005, the property was heavily damaged in Hurricane Katrina, resulting in a $300,000 repair project. But following quick efforts, and just a year later, in 2006, the annual Old Biloxi Cemetery Tour was started. The tour has persisted into the present, and every year features a different theme, complete with reenactments of important histories revolving around those buried in the old yard. The cemetery remains open to this day, with its eldest readable tombstone dated at 1811, though many more weathered markers are suspected to be much, much older. Over its many years, Old Biloxi has been surrounded in tales of inexplicable phenomena and urban legends, namely relating to its interment of some of the early community's founding families, and both staff and visitors of the yard have reported orbs visible to the naked eye, strange mists that float with sentience, half-formed silhouettes in the backgrounds of photographs, and encounters with shadowy figures and apparitions in clothing or uniforms spanning the ages, some of the most prevalent of which include soldiers from various U.S. wars. Also reported across Old Biloxi are disembodied voices and footsteps, the constant feeling of being watched or followed, and the sensation of being touched, poked, or grabbed at by invisible hands. And several informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, frequent EVPs, recordings of inhuman noises, and even scientific documentation of severe temperature fluctuations. Number 2. Evergreen Mortuary and Cemetery. Evergreen Mortuary and Cemetery, located off North Oracle Road in Tucson, Arizona, is a funeral home and associated 93-acre cemetery, boasting the title of being one of the oldest established businesses and burying grounds in the city. That's also been recognized as one of the best interment options by 3 Best Rater. Historically, Evergreen was first established in 1907 in a park-like setting just outside of the rapidly expanding Tucson city limits, and following its completion, a number of inner-city burials were moved to the new site. In 1974, Evergreen Mortuary was established, allowing families the convenience of having a mortuary, cemetery, and crematorium all in one place, while also bumping the yard to the tier of being the largest cemetery and mortuary combination in all of southern Arizona. In 1982, the Pursuit of Excellence program was initiated by the National Funeral Directors Association, with Evergreen jumping on board and gaining national recognition for its participation and efforts. And in 2014, the yard was acquired by North Star Memorial Group, who continues to manage operations to this day. Evergreen remains open to the public and for interments, and offers guided or self-guided touring options of its grounds, which accommodate more than 30,000 bodies, as well as its chapel for services of all denominations. This aged property is rumored to be stalked by the restless spirits of some of Tucson's earliest pioneers, and over the years, both staff and visitors have reported strange puffs of smoke that float with seeming sentience, orbs visible to the naked eye, and encounters with both shadowy figures and full-bodied apparitions varying in era of attire. Many have described voices, inhuman noises, screams, moans, and the sounds of young children playing, heard when the cemetery is completely empty, and several informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, intriguing EVPs, and odd streaks of light in the backgrounds of photographs and video. Also reported across Evergreen is the constant feeling of being watched or stalked, the sensation of being touched, grabbed, or of having one's hair pulled by something unseen, and instances in which the yard is overcome with an unnatural quiet and stillness. Number 1. Elmwood Cemetery. Elmwood Cemetery, located off Elmwood Street in Detroit, Michigan, is an 86-acre historic graveyard holding the title of being the oldest continuously operated, non-denominational burying plot in the state, as well as its first certified arboretum. Historically, and rather brutally, on July 31st of 1763, land now holding Elmwood would play host to the Battle of Bloody Run, a skirmish fought between the army of Chief Pontiac and British forces that resulted in a British defeat, and incidentally, in the deaths of one Captain James Doliel and around 60 of his soldiers. Much later, in 1846, 42 acres of this land were purchased from the George Hunt Farm by a group of wealthy Detroit interests. In 1849, the cemetery was incorporated as a non-profit corporation, and in 1883, an endowment fund was formed for the present and future care of the yard and its individual lots. In 1890, Elmwood's grounds were redesigned entirely by one Frederick Law Olmsted, who transformed their previously basic cemetery layout into a lush and desirable park-like atmosphere. And slowly, over the years and into the present, adjacent farm plots were purchased from surrounding owners in order to bring the yard up to its current size of 86 acres. Elmwood remains open to both new burials and to visitors to this day, and boasts interments ranging from governors to mayors, judges to abolitionists, and more. Predating establishment of this cemetery itself, a number of stories of hauntings resulting from the bloody battle that transpired on site had already formed, and over its extensive lifespan, both visitors and yard officials have reported orbs visible to the naked eye, strange lights sighted at a distance that always fade when approached, and patches of fog that seemingly descend upon the property alone, while weather even feet past the ground's edge is completely clear. The full-bodied manifestations of both early native warriors and of British soldiers have been encountered, and are often sighted at a distance fighting on the horizon, and many have described the commotion of disembodied screaming, shouts, war cries, tribal drums, musket fire, and the clash of battle. Several informal investigations of Elmwood have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, and near-constant malfunctions with electronics, and the phantom smells of gunpowder and rotting or burning flesh have been documented. At the chapel, many have reported strange lights spied through the windows at night, shadowy figures that slink about, and the scent of incense when the building is dormant and quiet. Lastly, probably relating to the monument holding the same title, and possibly most infamously, the whole of graveyard property is rumored to be stalked by a presence dubbed the Veiled Lady, which has been described as the mysterious but ominous form of a woman covered from head to toe in formal attire that dons a veil. This sinister specter is said to invoke an unbridled terror in any who cross her path that's resulted in a handful actually sprinting for their lives from the yard, and that's even been linked to several injuries. Taking its fascinating and gruesome history into account and coupling it with a massive assortment of purported hauntings and local legends, we felt Elmwood was the perfect final choice as the most haunted cemetery in the United States. Thanks for tuning in for our fourth list of picks for some of the most haunted graveyards in the United States. If you enjoyed our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.